I would say majority of consumers within the space, they purchase something, some game, some project as some sort of like an investment tool, some sort of like something where they see a positive ROI or they see big or cool future prospects from. A lot of people definitely are excited about the game, but I did, from sentiment, I do know that a lot of people also don't exactly have the time to be playing a game. So, where do you kind of see your consumer base coming from? Do you see it coming from the Web3 space or more from the Web2 space and integrating over?
Our game by design is meant to take those Web 2 gamers and make them feel comfortable playing a blockchain game. We basically wanted them to feel like they don't even know they're playing a blockchain game, they're just playing a good game. We anticipate that ballpark 80% of our users aren't going to spend a single penny in the game and not pay anything for any NFTs or any cosmetic skins or anything like that. Um, that's how you get that big base of people coming back into the game, and that's how you build that widespread culture that we alluded to here probably like 10 or 15 minutes ago. So if you're just a web 2 person, you're like, I think NFTs are shady, I think blockchain is weird, you are going to play big time during that global launch period and just have a good time. And you're going to collect NFTs and not know it. You're going to find some loot, you're going to find some skins, you may even find some space, and you're going to be like, that's cool, I don't know what to do with that. So even if you're a casual gamer, yeah, you may find a couple things and you could probably sell them on the marketplace later on, but you certainly don't have to. Really advanced players, who are, part of guilds and they're out there really grinding, beating enemy, picking up stuff, putting it in the marketplace, upgrading it, they're going to find something there that they like too. If you wanted to make a game that was just for very advanced gamers, like, hey, this is all they ever want to do, you would inherently have to structure the game in a way that is unappealing to casual gamers who want to play like something that's kind of relaxing at the end of the day. But if you want to appeal to that latter group, people who are like, I kind of like NFTs, but I'm not in love with them, I just want to be able to play it a little bit, then you end up restructuring those incentives accordingly. It's very hard to appeal to everybody, and that's why we kind of went for an overall premise of let's bring in as many people as we can.
So I noticed that a lot of players, they love to overprice things. Like they'll get a common skin and they'll throw it up on the marketplace for like $10,000 or $50,000, and nobody's gonna buy it. So I was thinking, like, would it be a good idea to put like a recommended trade price for everything? Like, hey, this is recommended to be sold at like $200 or whatever. Just a recommendation to the players, and then so people can gauge, what the value of certain things are, so that the marketplace is just not flooded with so much nonsense. And I see that a lot in blockchain games where just the marketplace is just flooded and nobody knows what to buy or what to do because everything is just so overpriced. So what would you think about like having a recommended price for each item, or would that not be a good idea? And if so, why?
So that exact feedback is what we heard in the first 24 hours of the game and then changed in the next 48 hours. If you look at the big time marketplace today versus where it was at the start of early access launch, it looks different, right? Like you can already see now what the respective rarity of each types of those items are, because people were like, I have no idea how rare this item is. I found an axe, it looks cool, is it rare, should it be expensive, should it be cheap? And they put it on there for like $20,000 or like $1 million, and nobody bought it. And that's what we try to do with by specifying what the rarity is. You can see things on there like it's epic, it's uncommon, it's what are the things we got on here? Rare, we have very rare, right? And that's what we try to do in terms of like the pricing as well, to kind of help people understand, particularly for people who don't play the game right now, or like, I think this thing looks really cool, I think I want my character to have this, but I don't know how respectively rare it is inside the game. That's what we did. When you talk about a suggested price, I think that's a feature some of our marketplace people have put together. I definitely think there's some merit in there. Um, but if I had to guess, it's probably not something we're going to come out with until a little bit after global launch. In part because once thousands of players are flooding into the game, I think it's going to take the marketplace in some pretty new directions, probably even some places we haven't even thought of yet. And we want to make sure when we put out that information, it's quality stuff that users can use and isn't going to kind of cause confusion and stuff. But I like the idea. I think there's a lot of merit to it.
I think one thing that is definitely apparent, especially at an early stage, is an issue like that. But once, I think once there's a lot more players, a lot more movement and volume happening on the marketplace, then it would slowly level out by itself. The market will set the price for different items. And if you want to set outrageous, prices, then it's just going to get ignored, right?
I have a question like regarding the gameplay right now. Like I'm seeing like a lot of streamers are streaming the game, but it's kind of like the same enemies that they're fighting with, or maybe it's kind of similar to like killing like three wanderers or killing seven wanderers. Like I don't see much content in early access at this point. So when we go to in the public launch or maybe in the jetpacks access, will we gonna see more content to the game or more varieties to the enemies?
So, short answer is yeah, you're going to see a lot. I mean, it's early access. We intentionally did not release most of our gameplay in those adventure places, as you've probably heard that term thrown around. So, what you're seeing is one world. It's called Time's End. There are, I think we have 5 worlds that will come out for global launch, and then we have multiple worlds that will get released in subsequent periods over a 5-year period. So, like, yeah, the enemy are going to look a little bit different on each of the worlds, and each world has pretty different focuses, for lack of a better word. For example, one of our worlds is not is not combat focused. It's really just community focused. You haven't even seen that one yet. We didn't even put that into early access launch. So yes, you're going to see a lot more types of enemies. Yes, you're going to see a lot more adventures. Yes, there will be dinosaurs. You may or may not be able to ride some of them. I don't know. We'll see. I'm feeling pretty hopeful right now. But yeah, you're going to see a lot more in terms of that. And then just for the audience that's not as familiar with it, the enemy, kind of looks the same, but they always come at you in a different way. You can run through the same dungeon multiple times, and every time you go through it, it's going to be different. Those things are randomized each time, and that's one of the appealing parts of an RPG, an MMORPG, is that you can randomize those things each time. Different loot, different enemy, different styles, different drops inside the game. Why? Because there's not a linear storyline that we have to adhere to, and that's why you can kind of like make that user experience different every single time somebody goes through it.
You guys mentioned that your estimation is about 80% of your players being in the general games. He's wondering how many hours of planned content are you guys estimating for your global launch? Like story quests, dungeons, raids, etc.
Yeah, so glad you asked this question because it's something that shows the extent of our designers and development team. We right now have around 5 years of gameplay created, so basically the player will never get bored. Our dungeons are procedurally generated, which means that they change all the time. So the user never has to encounter the same thing that they did. It's never going to be that boring, repetitive level where you're like, oh my gosh, this is the same thing over and over and over again. So to answer the question in short, 5 years of gameplay is loaded up, and you'll never see the same thing twice.
So I'm wondering, right? I have seen some generative games in the sense, right, that have been done on Web 2.0, and the AI or the script code, whatever you want to say, technology behind it, when they have the generation like that, I've seen a lot of similarities in terms of dungeons or gameplay or creatures that are created by it. So do you guys have anyone on your team or any experience in terms of like trying to make it varied enough, right? I just don't know how the technology works. So my mind is wondering, like, how is it going to be not custom enough, but interesting enough where the entries into whatever the generation are going to be, intriguing, if that makes sense.
It's an interesting like game development question. When you talk about like how much you can meter, like dial up that randomness versus turn it down, a lot of it depends on the type of game you're trying to develop. Let's say you're playing a game like Zelda or something like that, where there is a linear story from start to finish, and you want that player to follow like an exact storyline. You don't really randomize anything in that story because you want the that player to follow along in a set story and have a similar experience as their friends. When you have an MMORPG, or an open world, you turn up that randomness. Um, why? Because you want them to be able to run around in the same places and have it not be the exact same experience every time. And you don't have to follow a linear story. There is an overarching story to Big Time, but you can't really like be Big Time. It's not like you got to the end of it and like we're there to like high five you and be like, that's it, you're done. You never need to do anything more here. And so we need to really generate new content throughout. I'm not going to give away all the secrets of the stuff that we vary inside of the game, but loot changes through each dungeon. The enemies change in each dungeon each time you go through it. The drops, they change. The layout inside of the dungeon changes each time. Yeah, the enemy right now might be similar, but that's mostly a reflection of the world right now that you happen to be seeing inside the game. But we try and vary as much as we can. That, on top of the fact that you can bring in players from throughout the world, means that there's a lot of things different each time you enter a server and start playing. I think just like it's interesting. A lot of people ask similar questions about the token, and it's because I think they look at Big Time through the same lens that they look at like Axie Infinity.
Yep.
But the token, the way it functions inside the game is very different, and it is meant to be used inside of the game and really to drive that in-game economy, not tied to like a DAO or anything like that. And yeah, you're going to be able to move it on and off chain through that patented technology that we mentioned, but like generally, it's really meant to stay inside the game.
Yeah, I am pretty new to Big Time and just learning about the project, super interested in it. And I went and bought a Jade Pass. I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to test the system with a Mac.
To answer your question, you should be able to. I don't know that you'll be able to render the game as someone who has a $10,000-$15,000 PC, but it should be pretty compatible.
I just talking to some other people who have Macs and have like played the Gold Pass. I think they had to download some extra software to get it, like Wine. I haven't dug into super closely into it, but people with suboptimal specs have been able to play it. But we got to give you that caveat too of like you're going to probably have to go through some extra steps to make sure it runs on your game, similar to what you would do with other PC games.